Hello everyone. I'm sorry again about the confusion this past weekend. Here are the instructions specifically for the assignment. If you still have confusion after this instruction video, you're welcome to email me your questions or we can set up a time to meet via Zoom or FaceTime. So we're going to talk about standard acceleration charts. Standard acceleration charts have to do with being a fluent learner. It is good to be accurate, i.e. correct. However, it does not provide information about how long it takes to complete a task. True mastery of performance includes accuracy plus speed, which ensures that the learner is performing the task at an appropriate speed, not just correctly. One example is tying our shoes. How satisfied would parents or teachers be if we taught a learner how to accurately tie their shoes, but it took them an hour to do it? For some skills, speed is also necessary, also needs to be considered. When we look at graphing on the standard acceleration chart, there are two dimensions that we need to take into consideration. The first is frequency, that is the count per unit of time, and time, such as multiplying by the same factor will produce changes that look like the same size. For example, when we look at standard acceleration charts, going from 10 to 50 will look the same as going from 1 to 5 because both have acceleration of times 5. This is achieved in a standard acceleration chart by converting all behaviors to counts per minute and plotting on different graphs. For this assignment, we will be using the daily graph, but there are also weekly, monthly, and yearly charts that can also be used. Finally, the standard acceleration chart has been designed to display proportional changes in behavior. That is, we can see how much the behavior or skill has changed based on the previous behavior by comparing the acceleration lines between periods. In this assignment, it will be weeks. There are a lot of different conventions used in standard acceleration charting. We're going to be focusing on the ones that are required for this assignment. If this activity is something that you enjoy or want to know more about, there are several courses available to increase your knowledge and expertise in this area. For the purpose of this assignment, your goal is to get a frequency. Remember, that is not the raw score, but a rate of 16 correct and 1 incorrect in a period of 1 minute with a stack of 42 cards by the end of the course. Having 42 cards is not a requirement to pass the course. You're also not going to have to remember the definitions verbatim. You're just going to have to remember the key terms and concepts, so it may be helpful to underline or highlight the key terms and concepts in the definition so they stand out. When you submit the assignment, remember to submit both your data sheet and your standard acceleration chart correctly according to the instructions in the Sakai folder. I have added the grading rubric so you can also see what you are being graded on. As part of the assignment, you are required to do at least one timing per day for 5 days per week. You can conduct more per day and track the best one from your practice, such as the one that you get the most correct on. So what do you need to do? You're going to need to do at least one timing per day for 5 days per week. Before you start a timing, you are going to shuffle the cards. You do this because you want to ensure that you do not contact the same cards in the same order during each timing. This will become more important as you increase the number of cards that are in your deck. You will want to set your alarm for 1 minute and press the start button when you are ready. As you recite the terms aloud, you want to create 2 piles for the cards, one for correct words and one for incorrect words. Any terms that you do not know, say pass and put into the incorrect deck. When the alarm goes off, count how many cards you have in each pile. Any cards that you did not get to are also considered incorrect. Once you have counted the number of correct and incorrect responses, you're going to complete the data sheet. You're going to use the same data sheet for the entire semester, so you may want to print a few copies out. The first thing you do is record the date of the timing, the length of the timing, and the number that you got correct and incorrect. Next, you are going to calculate the record floor. The record floor represents the lowest possible of non-zero results that you can get on the assessment, or the least amount of non-zero change that can occur. So if the record floor is 1, we can measure changes in the frequencies as small as plus or minus 1. Calculating the record floor in standard acceleration charts allow us to see proportional change in a behavior or skill. That is, changes in frequency between 1 and 5 will have the same slope as changes between 10 and 50. Next, you're going to calculate your frequency. You will use the same formula for both the correct and incorrect responses. The formula for the frequency is the total number of correct or incorrect responses multiplied by the record floor. For example, if your record floor is 1 and the number of correct responses is 3, your formula would be 3 times 1 and your incorrect responses would be 1 times 13. It's important to remember that this is the number you're going to put in the graph. This is important because you're going to be adding time when you start to add more cards, and as such your record floor will change, which in turn will change the frequency and the number of cards you need to get correct to maintain a frequency of 16. You are now done with the data sheet, and we'll switch over to the standard acceleration chart. As a reminder, the x-axis are cycles and the y-axis are days of the week. Along the top of the graph are the days of the week from Monday to Sunday. Sunday is the bold line, which can help you to figure out which day you need to graph on. It's also helpful to remember to use a pencil when graphing your data in case you make an error to keep the graph clean. Given the style of the graph, you can imagine what it would look like if you are using whiteout to correct mistakes or to cross out mistakes anywhere. Again, the cycles on the left-hand side of the graph tell you what to count. So if you are starting on the 1 line, you will be counting by 1, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. At the 10 line, you are going to count by tens, such as 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. At the 0.1 line, you are counting by and from 0.1. So for example, that would be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Another way of conceptualizing this is 1 response per 10 minutes. For example, if the frequency is 0.1, this represents a rate of 1 response in 10 minutes. Finally, ensure that you are making your data points using the correct symbols. You will use dots to indicate behavior that you want to accelerate, and you will use X's to indicate the incorrect responses or indicate the responses you want to decelerate. You also want to be sure that you are correctly entering all of the learner's information into the chart. So at the top of the chart, you want to be sure that you enter the date that you started the program on, such as the 16th of September 2019. And at the bottom on the performer line, you want to put your name. On the counted line, you want to write SafeMeds, since this is the program you are doing. Next, you are going to complete the acceleration chart. The first thing you want to mark on your chart is the performance aim with the aim star that looks like an A. This is drawn at the intersection of the aim date, such as when you want to accomplish your goal, and the aim frequency, the acceleration you want to achieve. Again, the goal for this assignment is to have a frequency of 16 correct per minute at the end of the course. So you want to ensure that you're putting the aim star here on the chart. You will do the same for 1 incorrect per minute. To indicate this acceleration goal, you are going to want to put an upside down version of the aim star at the same point to show that your goal is to only have 1 incorrect per minute at the end of the course. To plot your point, the first thing you want to do is to find the correct day of week. These lines are really close together, so it may be helpful to use a ruler on the right side to help line everything up. Start graphing at the leftmost side of the graph. Finally, you want to place a dash for your record floor, which has been calculated on your data sheet. In our example, the record floor was 1, so the dash goes on the 1 line. If you are doing 2-minute timings, your record floor will be different and you will have to plot accordingly. Next, we're going to plot our frequency data for the day. Again, as a reminder, remember that you are entering the number from the frequency column, not the number correct responses column. This is important because we're not going to be looking at the number that you get correct or incorrect, but the frequency or rate by which you are acquiring these terms. Going back to the data sheet, on the first day, I had a frequency of 3 for correct terms and 13 for incorrect terms. I'm going to put a dot at the intersection of Monday and a 3 and the 3 line, and I am going to put an X at the intersection of the Monday and just a bit above the 10 for the incorrect responses. Because remember, at the 10 line, we start counting by tens and not ones. So 13 would be between the 10 and the 20 line. If you do not get any of the terms correct, you would put a question mark underneath the record floor. This is one area that there are several different conventions for how it is done. For the first week, this is all you want to do for the data sheet and for the standard acceleration chart each day. When you get to the end of the week, you want to draw the acceleration line for the frequency of correct data for the week. This is a line of best fit, meaning it is an approximation. However, you should try to have equal dots above and below the line. Then use the acceleration finder to calculate the slope of your line. That is the tool that you are putting on a transparency. Once you have done this, return to the data sheet. In the last column titled Visual Inspection, you will record the acceleration under the column for multiply or divide. You are only required to record the acceleration for the correct data in this column. When describing acceleration, you want to use the multiply symbol, and when you are describing deceleration, you want to use the divide symbol. You are now done for week 1, and you do not have to worry about the column for jump or turn for week 1. After week 2, you will have 2 acceleration lines. This means that you will be able to start making comparisons between weeks. When we describe the changes in frequency and acceleration, we use the terms jump or turn, both of which are done using visual inspection. Jump describes the changes in frequency, whereas turn describes the changes in acceleration. For both jump and turn, you want to use the terms up or down to describe the change. To calculate the jump, you need to compare the level of acceleration between weeks. This is done by comparing the last data point from the previous week to the first data point of the second week. For jump, there was no change. 9 was the last data point in week 1 and the first data point in week 2. Therefore, I will record that there was no jump. For turn, you want to compare the slope of the acceleration lines between the weeks. Again, there was no change in acceleration. That is, they were both acceleration of times 2. So I will record that there was no turn. Typically, we do not record when there is no change in jump or turn, but since this is a learning exercise, we are asking you to do it. If there is a change in the data point between weeks, say I had a frequency of 9 on week 1 and 12 on week 2, then I would record it as jump up. Or if I had a frequency of 9 in week 1 and 6 in week 2, then I would record it as jump down. The same goes for turn. If acceleration was bigger in week 2, say times 2.2 compared to week 2 or times 2 in week 1, then I would have to say that it was turn up. And if the acceleration was smaller, say 1.2, then I would say that it was turn down. You will record this in the last column on the data sheet. When you are able to recite 16 cards correctly in a minute, then there will be a few changes that you are going to make. The first is that you are going to add more cards to your deck. I recommend adding 5 to 8 cards using the terms from the textbook. You also want to mark that you have added cards on your data sheet by highlighting the row in which the cards were added in yellow. You also want to mark the increase in cards on the standard acceleration with a plus sign above the frequency dot that you add. You are also going to add 15 seconds to your timing because you're adding more cards. This means that you will want to recalculate your record floor. As you can see in the example, getting 16 correct in this period of time changes your frequency to 12.8 because you are no longer learning at the same rate as previously. Therefore, you need to be learning new terms to maintain the frequency of 16. In the example provided, you would need to recite 20 correct terms to maintain a frequency of 16. As your learning progresses through the term and you learn more definitions, you will continue to add 15 seconds of time and add 5 to 8 cards to your deck to prevent hitting a ceiling. During this exercise, if you are not meeting the frequency aim of 16 or the acceleration aim of times 2 for 2 consecutive weeks, you must develop an intervention plan and denote it on the standard acceleration chart with a phase line and a description of the intervention. If you do not meet the aim of such as 16 or acceleration aim for 2 consecutive weeks following the introduction of the intervention plan, we're now at 4 weeks, you must contact myself and the TA with at least 2 suggestions for improving performance and a rationale for why you think they will work. I hope this video has helped to clarify this exercise. If you have any questions about the assignment, please feel free to email me. Looking at the grading rubric to make sure that you are including all the required steps and information will also be helpful. Refer to the chart book and the Stephanie Bates video for more information about standard acceleration. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day.